Hi everyone, thank you so much for clicking on my channel. I have the craziest story for you guys today, and I feel bad because I've been a little bit inconsistent in my uploading schedule, but that's mostly because I've had a lot going on in my personal life, all good things. But I also have moved to posting crime videos on TikTok just because it takes a lot less time, so it's less of a commitment, and I've been getting a lot of engagement on there. And my TikTok is Celestial Sylvia. I will also have that in the description box below, so you guys can go check that out if you'd like to. I will continue uploading on YouTube because I really like to get in depth to these stories. But yeah, without further ado, let me tell you about the crazy case of Pearl Lusk and Olga Rocco. I'm not joking, this is like one of the weirdest stories I've ever heard, and if somebody told me this story just like at dinner one night, I would think they were lying because it just sounds too fantastical. But this is a true story, and it takes us to New York City in the 1940s. So Pearl Lusk was an 18-year-old girl who had just moved to New York City from Quakersville, Pennsylvania, where she had gone to high school. So she was ready to start out her life in the big city, and she got a job being a sales assistant at a local department store. And this job afforded her an apartment in the Upper West Side. So it was close to Central Park, there were a lot of bars and restaurants to go to, and all she had to do to get to work was to hop on the subway and take it downtown. Pearl is absolutely overjoyed at the adult life that she's carved out for herself in just a few months of living in New York City. She was picking out furniture that fit her personal sense of style in her first ever apartment. She had changed the way that she was doing her hair. She had actually worn mascara for the first time recently. And she was also experimenting with lipstick shades that were a lot darker and bolder than what the girls in Quakerstown, Pennsylvania would wear to school. And like most New Yorkers, Pearl rode the subway on a daily basis, and she rode it to work every single day. And when you're on the subway, and it seems like it was the same as it was in the 1940s, but it's all just people trying to get from A to B. So people usually keep to themselves, and they usually have like a book or something to work on because everyone is just sitting on the subway next to each other. A lot of the time there's not a lot of space, but people generally don't interact. And that's why Pearl is surprised when this extremely well-dressed and attractive older gentleman walks up to her and says hello. He introduces himself as Alan LaRue, and he asks her if she's single, and she says yes, but she doesn't really go out with people she doesn't know that well. So she really wasn't interested in going on a date with him. And 3 months into her life in New York City, she gets called into work one day, and her boss tells her that because the holiday season is winding down, they're preparing for a dip in business in January and February. So Pearl, along with a few of her coworkers, gets laid off on Christmas Eve. Yeah, so it's good to know that corporations were assholes even back in the 1940s. Pearl is let go from her job on Christmas Eve, and she is sitting on the subway going back uptown so she can return to her apartment in the Upper West Side. And it's on this very day that Alan LaRue approaches her again. Maybe if this had occurred on literally any other day of the year, she would have acted differently, but her self-esteem had taken a hit with her getting laid off. So she did decide this time that she would meet up with Alan LaRue for a drink. So they meet up at a bar in Times Square, and she sits down, orders a 7 and 7, and she waits for him. When he shows up, they get to talking, they're getting along, and it gets to that point on every first date when they ask, so what do you do for a living? And Alan tells her that he works in like insurance investigations or like insurance claims. I forget what the title for this job is, but basically every insurance agency has to have people who investigate the claims that their clients make. They will, ask you to tell them your story, and then they will go and they'll make sure that that actually happened. Like if somebody runs into you in traffic and they total your car, the insurance investigator is going to go to the junkyard, look at your car, and make sure that that is exactly what happened and that you weren't drunk and just like crashed it into a pole. And this is Alan's job, and his client is a jewelry company. So he was just telling her a little bit about his job, and of course, he asks her, "What do you do?" And that's when she vents her frustrations about the fact that she has now gotten laid off. And to Pearl's delight, Alan tells her that he has a side gig that she can do for cash. And he goes back to talking about his job, and he says that one of their clients is a jewelry company, and they are selling some of their jewels to be used as embellishments on hats for the Croydon Hat Company. However, they believe that an employee with the Croydon Hat Company has been stealing some of these jewels every time she goes into work. This woman is named Olga Rocco, and they think that she's been keeping the jewels on her person when she's at work. They think that she must have like a belt that she's wearing underneath her dress where she has all of these jewels. And basically, Alan asks Pearl to spy on Olga for him. Olga already knows what Alan looks like, so he can't follow her around because the second she sees him, she's going to ditch the jewels and not show up to work at the next day. So he needs somebody who's a stranger who can keep tabs on where she goes and who can hopefully help them get these stolen jewels back. Now, Pearl is super interested in this opportunity. Not only does she need money, but she's like you and me. She is a true crime fan. She loves detective novels. She is so excited about getting to go undercover, and she immediately accepts Alan's offer. So Alan gives Pearl the address to Olga's place of work, and he tells her to walk in and ask for a Sadie White. Nobody at that company had that name, but when the receptionist would tell Pearl that, she was supposed to say, "Oh, can I just like do a loop around the office and see if she's here?" So Pearl does that, and she's able to lay eyes on Olga, and she looks at her. She makes sure that she knows the curve of her face. She makes sure that she knows like her body type, the clothes that she wears, because this is winter time. So everyone has their like trademark winter coat that they wear to last through the next cold few months. So she gets eyes on Olga, and she's like, okay, I know what she looks like. I can identify her out of a crowd. And she goes back and tells Alan. And Alan is like, okay, now the next step in our plan is for you to take a photo of Olga's back when she's on the subway, and the camera that you will be using will have an extra special X-ray quality to it. So when you take a photo of her back, we're going to be able to see if she has these jewels on her person the way that they thought she did. And Alan is really specific. He's like, you need to be within 2 to 3 feet of this woman in order for the photo to turn out right. And Pearl completely believes him. And when he presents Pearl with the X-ray camera, he's like, yeah, it looks a little weird, but we can't have it looking like an X-ray camera either, or else Olga might get suspicious again. And the camera is like inside of a box. It's a little bit larger than a shoebox. It's kind of heavy, and then there's a string hanging out of the bottom. And he's like, just hold this box, and when you're ready to take her photo, you're just gonna hold it, and then you're gonna pull it and try to take it like at her waist area. So Pearl gets on the same subway as Olga, and she makes sure to get off at the same stop. And as Olga is walking away, Pearl gets up behind her, pulls the string on the bottom of the box, and then walks away. She then meets up with Alan at that exact same bar in Times Square, and she presents the box to him, and he takes it. However, the next time that they meet up, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, like, the photo ended up being blurry. It's not high enough quality for us to use it. I'm afraid we're gonna have to ask you to do it again, but this time I'll get you a higher quality camera. So he asks Pearl to meet up with him again on December 31st, 1946. And he gives her the box again, and this time it's wrapped in holiday paper. It says Merry Christmas in red and Happy New Year in green. And it's the same size, and there's that same string hanging out of the bottom of the box so that she can just pull it and take the photo quickly and then walk away. So Olga and Pearl are sitting on the same subway car, silently, not talking the way all people do on the subway. And Olga gets up when it's her stop and begins to walk. And Pearl does the exact same thing as she did the first time. She walks up behind Olga, makes sure that she's 2 feet away, and she pulls the string on the bottom of the box. But then a gunshot rings out. Olga falls to the ground in a pool of blood, and the blood also, because Pearl was standing so close to her, splatters all over the front of Pearl. And the both of them are just so shocked. I mean, everyone around them is screaming. Olga's leg is horrifically mangled. Like, everyone who's at the scene can tell that, like, she's probably not ever going to be able to use it again. And a kind passerby runs over and takes his belt off to make a tourniquet around Olga's thigh. So the first authority figure that arrives on the scene is an employee of the New York City subway, and he asks Pearl what happened. And Pearl at this point is so confused that she actually says, "I was taking this woman's photo and somebody must have shot her." But little does Pearl know that she was the one with the gun. So police arrive to the scene and they take Pearl's box from her and they open it up. And inside of this box, they can see that there is a sawn-off shotgun along with this like wire and string contraption, so that when Pearl pulled the string on the bottom of the box, it like went all the way up through the box and eventually it pulled the trigger on the gun. This sounds like the wildest contraption, but there's actually a photo of this that I'm putting up on the screen now, and you can see that there's a sawn-off shotgun and then a wire contraption that is attached to the string that is hanging out of the bottom of the box. Olga is laying there on the ground waiting for the ambulance, and she says, "Well, he got me this time. Now if he wants me, he can take me. I'm crippled." And the police realize that Pearl and Olga had been talking to the same man. And Alan LaRue was not his real name. His real name was Olga Rocco. See, Olga was not a thief. Instead, she was just a regular woman trying to flee an abusive relationship. Olga had met Alan Rocco just 2 years prior, and months into dating, she agrees to marry him because he seems like the perfect guy. He's caring, he's sweet, he buys her tons of gifts, he seems to have a lot of money. This is exactly the kind of person that a girl would want to marry in the 1940s. And on May 14th, 1945, Alan Rocco and Olga Rocco marry. But the relationship goes south very shortly after this, just months into the marriage. Just months into the marriage, Alan started to show his true colors. He was jealous, he was manipulative, he would follow her out on nights with friends, and once she cut him off, this only got worse. In the early fall of 1946, Alan started stalking Olga. He would drive up alongside her as she was walking through the streets of New York, and he would offer her a ride. She knew that he was dangerous, so she always said no, and he was literally doing this night after night. It's like all he had to do with his time was follow around Olga. But one night she was exhausted and she agreed to get in the car. But the second she sat down in the passenger seat, Alan pulled out a knife and held it to her neck. He then drove 2 hours away to Poughkeepsie, New York, and he kept her for 7 days in a cabin there. Eventually, he finally agrees to take her back to her sister's house in Brooklyn, and Olga is just absolutely terrified of this man because she realizes that he's much more dangerous than she originally thought. And again, on November 1st, 1946, Olga was standing in her kitchen when she hears the sound of glass shattering, and then she feels a searing pain in her thigh. Alan had shot her through her kitchen window with a gun. It was just a minor flesh wound in her thigh, but at least now she could show the police how he terrorized her because she had actual physical evidence. Olga had actually gone to the police about a dozen times prior to the December 31st, 1946 incident. So far, all the police had done was offer her an escort for when she gets off the train that would then walk her from the subway to her work. But the police had always been looking out for Olga Rocco, not this 18-year-old beautiful blonde girl. No one could imagine this diabolical plot that Alan had come up with. And of course, Pearl is not charged with anything because she was tricked into doing all of this. When Pearl is interviewed by the police, she correctly identifies Alan as the man in Olga's wedding photos. And at the hospital, simultaneously, the doctors tell Olga that they have to amputate her leg. But one good thing comes from this horrible attack, and it's that the police are finally taking Alan seriously. So they start a manhunt throughout the New York City area, and they quickly track Alan down in the Catskill Mountains. This is a mountain range that is fairly close to New York City, and basically Alan had just continued wreaking havoc on the people of the Catskills. He was like going from cabin to cabin, holding people hostage, just trying to find a place to stay, because it seemed like he had geniusly envisioned his plan to hurt Olga, but he didn't bother to figure out a getaway. The police eventually locate Alan, and they find him sleeping under a tree in 10 inches of snow. They tell him that he's under arrest, but he refuses to give up, and this results in a shootout with police. Olga Rocco is shot 4 times and dies, and in his pocket they find a photo of him and Olga. Moving on from this event, the two girls actually become kind of friends. They both have been manipulated and abused by Alan in their own way, and they keep in contact over the years, even though Olga and Pearl end up having very different lives. Basically, Olga ends up like drowning in debt from her medical bills. Not only was she shot a month prior, but then the December 31st incident left her with an amputated leg. So she's completely reliant on her family for a few months, and she does eventually get crutches, but she's never able to financially recover from this. She does end up filing a negligence lawsuit against the New York City Police Department because she had come to them so many different times complaining about Alan. But what's annoying is that this lawsuit doesn't even play out, because basically the police argue that because it was Pearl Lusk that shot Olga and not Olga Rocco, then they weren't negligent, because this whole time they were looking out for Alan, not Pearl. So because of like this little loophole, the lawsuit never gets to see the light of day, and Olga doesn't get any compensation. Pearl does end up marrying, and she later moves to Palm Beach, Florida, where she will die an old woman. I didn't really find that much information on what happened to Olga after this event. I mean, I know that once Alan was out of her life, she was able to kind of get it steady a little bit, but yeah, like I said, she was never able to become like a financially stable person, and I think Pearl ended up having a lot more fruitful life than Olga. But yeah, it's just so wild thinking of Pearl sitting on that subway car, holding a shotgun and not even realizing it. She was over here thinking that she was starting off a new side gig as being an investigator, but she was actually like on her way to horrifically maim somebody. It's a good thing that Pearl didn't try to test out this camera while she was sitting there on the subway. Like, that's just so wild that Alan would come up with this like diabolical plot, like to get somebody to do his dirty work for him under the guise of it being like a job opportunity. Is just absolutely crazy. And like my heart breaks for both of the girls. Like, Olga is, of course, like maimed for life, and then like Pearl has the PTSD from all of it. I mean, she was just out here trying to like live her best life in New York City, and I mean, Olga was doing the same thing. She was just trying to carry on with her life after a failed relationship, but Alan and his abusive ass wouldn't let her. And another really interesting fact is that Olga had been looking at Pearl on the subway car. Like, she noticed like the pretty wrapping paper and was looking at this young 18-year-old girl and, you know, remarked that she was very beautiful. And they were just sitting there on the subway car for a few seconds. not knowing that soon their lives would be entwined forever. But yes, that is the story of Pearl Lusk and Olga Rocco. As always, I love to hear your thoughts on these cases down below, so please drop me a comment. And if you liked this video and you haven't already, hit the subscribe button as well, because I come out with true crime cases every week, and I would absolutely love to see you at the next video. And as always, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and